It's all about the 75 years of wildlife conservation. And Andy brought some of his cool collectibles that he's collected over the years. So it's going to be a fun conversation.
It is, because there is more than 75 years of history with wildlife conservation and enforcement in Tennessee. And Andy's always been adamant about, let's go back further than that. We didn't begin in 49. It was a mess up until then, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot to talk about.
I think we should start off with this gentleman right here in the magazine. And we've got a signature. I think it's very cool.
Colonel Joseph H. Ackland, who was, in fact, the first official Tennessee game warden.
Looking for a lot of these old collectibles, it's sometimes a little bit too expensive for me. But I was fortunate, this commercial fishing license, 1909. Look how beautiful that is. And to have his signature on there is special. This was the first badge back in 1905 to 1915 with the Department of Game Fish and Forestry. This is Ackland's badge. Now, it's not, I hope
not
it's
the
badge. I've got a couple of licenses from Weekly County. Here's one from 1915 and a Reelfoot license from 1919. So obviously it was wallet card type licenses. And 1923, they started to use these canvas type. You pinned them on your back, on your hunting jacket. And then 1933, they started to go to the buttons. They had these all the way to 1941. And so this oval one is the last year. So just imagine.
Won't you take me back to Tennessee? The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest info about hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. This year, we celebrate the men and women of the TWRA responsible for 75 years of wildlife conservation. Now make welcome your host, Jason Harmon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. We're glad you're tuning in. Thank you for watching, for listening. We got a great show lined up for you today. It's all about the 75 years of wildlife conservation. We're halfway through or more, and excited to talk about this again today. Mr. Matt Cameron is helping me co-host.
Yes, sir.
Lined up Lieutenant Andy Collins to help dive in and explore and talk, and Andy brought some of his cool collectibles that he's collected over the years, so it's going to be a fun conversation.
It is, because there is more than 75 years of history with wildlife conservation and enforcement in Tennessee, and Andy's always been adamant about, let's go back further than that. We didn't begin in 49. It was a mess up until then, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
Before we get too deep, I want to highlight a radio station, WDEH 800 AM in Sweetwater, Tennessee. We appreciate that station for running WildCast Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. So check that out if you're in the area, WDEH. Appreciate our radio partners across state. Appreciate our TV partners. And appreciate you for watching and listening out there, especially on the podcast platforms on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all those fun places. So thank you for staying with us, and thanks for keep coming back. 75 years of history. We highlighted that in our spring magazine.
Correct.
So there's a plug there. If you don't have our magazine, go subscribe. You can do that at gooutdoorstennessee.com. Subscribe to our magazine. Put out 4 issues a year, and that includes the calendar issue. But anyway, spring 2024, we highlighted the 75th anniversary and 75 years plus of wildlife conservation and law enforcement. So
Who did we decide that was on the cover?
I don't remember if we decided who it was, but Richard Sims said he took the photo.
Let's see.
So back in the day, Richard worked for us for a little while, and he took that photo, yeah. But we've been throwing back a lot of photos and pulling out some of the old stuff and posting on our social media and putting them in our magazine. So I got the next issue coming out. It's going to have a deer on it. So anyway, it's cool to look back and see those shots and things like that. So subscribe to our magazine. So let's dive into this article and kind of where we are. And I just wanted you to kind of kick off, Matt. How did this idea come? You wrote the article along with help from Andy and others, and just maybe some of the high points that you learned from it, and how you had a great time researching it and writing it. Just share a little bit of that with folks, and then we'll dive into some of the specifics that I had jot it down here.
Well, I've always been fascinated in how we got to where we're at today and all the changes in the evolution of conservation in Tennessee. You know, who was responsible for getting it started, because at one point there were no wildlife fisheries laws in the state of Tennessee, which is hard to wrap your mind around. But did you know what year Tennessee became a state?
Shoot, I should know this.
So 1796.
Okay, 1790. Yeah, that's right.
We didn't have a wildlife law in the books until 1825. So prior to that, there was nothing. You could hunt, fish, trap by any means necessary all year long without limit. And what do you think happened to our wildlife in Tennessee?
Went way down.
We hunted some species to local extinction, called extirpation. And that's why I want to kick this off with that, is that left unchecked, you know, mankind's not going to do the right thing unless we're told this is how you can do it, this is when you can do it, and so forth and so on. Because here's 4 examples of big animals in Tennessee that were extirpated. Buffalo, this is a bison pelt right here. These things roamed. This is Buffalo Trail.
Oh, yeah.
Right, but they
Buffalo everywhere.
By 1910, they were gone. Elk, 1865, Obion County, the last elk was killed that we know of.
Yep.
Red wolves, mountain lions, both extirpated. Now, a little bit different for them. They were persecuted because early settlers had livestock. They feared them. They hated them, whatever. So they killed them for that. But also the pelts. Market hunting was huge back then. So all these things are very valuable for fur trade, for sport hunting. The buffalo was killed for political reasons, too, because of the Native Americans, to persecute them. It's really just sad, the negligence that Tennessee had for protecting its wildlife. So that's what got me interested in penning this article and getting to work with Andy for years. I knew his passion for the history of the agency. His mother, bless her soul, she collected so much information and researched that he already had on file. So it really made writing this article somewhat easy for me, because he had so much of the information there. I just had to kind of sort through it and organize it. So
great job.
Thank you and your mother for your efforts.
What was your mother's passion for that? Why did she?
She's just into genealogy stuff.
Okay.
She's got a lot of, I guess, websites and stuff that she's knows how to find things.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Newspaper articles and things like that.
It's just a passion for it.
Find.
Just enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Very cool. Well, so I think we should start off with this gentleman right here in the magazine, and we've got a signature. I think it's very cool.
Yeah,
crazy. Colonel Joseph H. Ackland, who was in fact a United States military colonel. I don't know if he would have been a little bit too young for the Civil War, because this had been 1903 when he was appointed.
Yeah, 1903.
So Andy can tell you more about him, but that's the first official Tennessee game warden. Doug Markham was always big on Colonel Ackland and kind of the history behind him. So I'll let Andy tell you more about him and about that signature and about the badge that this one right here is modeled after.
Well, like you said, he was the first game warden. I don't know the history to Ackland prior to that, but he's where it all started in the enforcement part of it. And he lived in Nashville and was able to assign deputies to enforce the game and fish laws, which started in 1905 with the Department of Game, Fish, and Forestry. That lasted till about 1915. But, looking for a lot of these old collectibles, obviously eBay is one of the places you look, and it's sometimes a little bit too expensive for me. Some of these things bid pretty high. But I was fortunate, this commercial fishing license right here, they called it a professional fisherman license, was 1909, and it's got a signature on it. So
hold it up there in case the camera can see it.
Which camera am I looking at? Right here? Doesn't matter.
Right over this way. Yeah.
Okay, but this is 1909. Look how beautiful that is.
Yeah,
how detailed they were with things back then. So,
very nice.
And to have his signature on there is special.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, I about wrecked my car when that thing popped up on eBay, trying to get off the road to hit buy it now. So it did. I got it for a pretty good price.
That's very cool.
So speaking of licenses, we still get some people that complain primarily on social media about having to buy a hunting and fishing license in Tennessee. Our license prices are some of the highest in the country, and they go on and on. It's a God-given right. Why should we have to pay for that? Well, if we didn't have hunting and fishing licenses, if we didn't have sportsman license dollars, we could not manage wildlife in Tennessee. And people are like, well, aren't the wildlife going to take care of themselves? Well, no, history has shown that unchecked, mankind will drive things into extinction. So we have to have an agency that governs that and enforces these rules and laws. So that's why we have hunting and fishing licenses. And then, not to get too far up in history too far, but 1937, the Pittman-Robertson Act was passed, which puts an excise tax on the sale of hunting equipment. So guns and ammo and hunting equipment. So since 1937, over $12 billion have come from Pittman-Robertson money that goes right back into state agencies to manage fish and wildlife. So if you are a hunter, you are paying for wildlife management and conservation in Tennessee. That's why we need you to buy the licenses. Of course, this is our careers. Our careers depend on it. But at the same time, if we didn't have hunters buying licenses, we could not protect the bountiful wildlife that we have in Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot of people you talk to think that we've always had all these deer running around Knoxville and stuff. And, and they don't understand that, I guess, 1950, the population was like 2,000 in the whole state. Like that. And they actually closed deer season in 1909, I think, 1907 or 1909 till like 1919. It was just, there weren't hardly any deer. And through licenses and restoration programs, protection laws, game wardens were able to enforce some of these laws and, stop these people. Very dangerous job back then, obviously, because this was people killed deer, obviously, for meat and everything else to support their family. And there's a couple of officers back then that got killed in the line of duty back in 1936 and 1938. You want to talk about those guys real quick? Or?
I will. Because by and large, the public doesn't know about that. And we as an agency really didn't know about it up until a few years ago. We didn't know. We never had an officer killed in the line.
And we haven't, since the Game and Fish, 1949. We've had some, some close calls, obviously. But, I never knew that we had a couple people die for the Game and Fish prior to 49.
So, to elaborate on it just a little bit further, probably do a whole podcast on just these two incidents alone. But the first one happened on July 5th of 1936 in Scott County when a deputy game warden, this was a Tennessee game warden, Lindsey Phillips was his name, and he was actually going to serve the Scott County Sheriff, Herbert Bilbrey, with a warrant on hunting violations. Now, we don't know what those violations were. So he goes into a tavern in Helenwood to serve this warrant, and there's two men with the sheriff who opened fire on Lindsey Phillips and gunned him down. And how many shots were fired?
16 shots.
16 rounds they laid down on him. So it was an ambush, and we figured they probably knew he was coming. They weren't going to let him arrest the sheriff, and they gunned him down and killed him. And then comes to court, they get acquitted of the crime. So no one ever did time for the murder of a Tennessee game warden. And we didn't know about that until, was it Law Enforcement Memorial that was doing some research and was going to recognize Tennessee officers killed in the line of duty?
I think it came from actually maybe Dustin Burke or Wade Young. They both live up there in Scott County. I think Dustin told me about this first. So Sergeant Burke, maybe he heard it from somebody else. But, we jumped on it real quick and did a little bit more research on it. And I was like, okay, so.
And it's factual. And so, he's never been publicly recognized. Hopefully at some point the agency can do something for him, but there's not a lot of information. And pretty much his children and anybody that was connected to that incident is long since gone that would have firsthand knowledge of that. But we also know about Gibson Webb, who was a deputy game warden. They had deputies back then. I think Andy mentioned that earlier. But the different agencies and departments and divisions of the state enforced game and fish laws for decades. It was really, really a mess. And so nobody really took enforcement seriously, I think, as part of the problem back then. Because, every constable, every police officer, every justice of the peace, anybody could be a quote-unquote game warden, and they had no respect whatsoever. So Gibson Webb in Knox County was beaten to death by the butt of a .22 rifle by three men that he confronted who were shooting on a farm that he worked on. He hears the shots fired. He goes to confront these three men, and they beat him to death in the presence of one of his children with the butt of that rifle. And he died a couple weeks later.
John Sevier area.
Yeah, right here, man.
Forks of the river around in there. So that
places that we've worked,
Rich history.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
not something we're proud of,
No.
whatsoever. But the one thing that did come from that is that Gib Webb's family contacted me after the article came out, and his grandson said, "I've never seen a photograph of my grandfather before. That's the only one we have, thanks to Andy's mother. Wherever that came from, it's probably
that wasn't it. It was Officer Klondike actually gave me that or sent me a picture of that. And we did some more research on it, and I called my mom, and I'm like, "Can you find anything else?" Within 5 minutes, blip, 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 the stuff's popping up on my emails.
Oh, wow.
Me, so.
And he didn't know his name was Gibson. He just knew it was Gib. And all he knew was a game warden. He got killed. They really didn't know how he died or anything. So it was rewarding that his family got some a personal gratification or whatever out of it.
That's cool. Yeah. I'm glad that they were able to connect with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the Depression era. Times were tough. People were desperate.
Oh, yeah.
Can't imagine what it was like enforcing law back then.
Well, let's dive into this badge. We didn't really touch on it that much. I'll let you hold it up, Andy, because we'll talk about the one you're wearing too. But that was one of the earlier badges before Game and Fish, right?
Yeah, this was the first badge back in 1905 to 1915 with the Department of Game, Fish, and Forestry. This is Ackland's badge. Now, it's not. I hope
Not
it's
the
badge. However, it was interesting how I got this. I had a city judge I knew well in Loudoun County when I was an officer assigned to Loudoun County, and I was going to Fort Loudoun Marina, and he had a houseboat down there, and he walked up to me and said, "Hey, I want to give you something," and pulled this badge out and said, "This was my grandfather's." And I was, back then I wasn't really big into the history. I was a patch collector and stuff, but I wasn't into badges and deep history of game and fish. And, I sort of let it go for a while, and then he ended up passing, and I wish I would have had a chance to talk to him more about it. Of course, I thanked him a million times and stuck this thing in my man cave, and I've tried to find out more about it, who his grandfather was, and just not having any luck trying to find out. So.
And you said you're not sure if it was the grandfather's badge or
I don't know if it was his grandfather was a game warden or a game warden gave it to his grandfather.
The mystery.
But anyhow, it was really neat for a judge to come up to me and give me that.
So then you modeled this year. You worked with leadership to model a badge.
Yeah, we took this badge basically and had it copied.
Yeah.
Okay. And changed the bottom. It obviously says Game, Fish, and Forestry on the bottom here, and we stuck the 75 years and put Wildlife Resources Agency instead.
Yeah.
And so this badge that you will see officers wearing this year, and hopefully up till July next year. When did 49 start?
I think it was around February.
So hopefully we can wear it long, and this is it. And just copied it, sent this badge off, and I actually drove it to Nashville.
Hand delivered
the badge, and they copied it, and here we go. So I love this. I'm so happy the agency did this for us.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's along the lines of the badge and let's talk a little bit about how law enforcement has changed. Even in your time that you've been on, talk about some of the badges, the patches, the gear. How licenses have changed, and you've got a lot of this in front of you. We can kind of show and tell too.
Just to give a quick rundown of how things changed. I mean, we had different departments. 1915, a new department came in until 1923. I've got a couple badges or licenses from Weakley County. Here's one from 1915, and a real foot license from 1919. So obviously it was wallet card type badges then. 1923, they changed departments again, went under the Department of Agriculture, and they started to use these oilcloth canvas type. You'd put them on your back.
Okay.
You pinned them on your back, on your hunting jacket or wherever, and they came with a license as well.
Okay.
So, and then 1933, they started to go to the buttons.
Those are the ones that seem to be pretty popular.
Not common. It depends on which ones you get. This is a regular hunting and fishing license, which they're hard to find and not cheap if you buy one at an auction.
Yeah.
But they had these all the way to 1941, and so this oval one is the last year. So just imagine. But they had so many different kinds, non-resident, fishing. They had for 4 years, they just had a fishing license finally the last 4 years. And commercial fishing, I mean, they have 50 different ones, it seems.
Wow.
So those are really hard to find. They really are.
Highly collectible.
Highly collectible.
And people probably have them in a drawer or in a box
well,
somewhere. Don't
I'd
even
say
know.
they do. And
You know.
if they do, then we're going to, hopefully take all this stuff one day and put it in some type of museum or something up in the main office. So, if you got anything like this, it'd be great if you want to get rid of it.
Yeah, I want to share. I mean,
Yeah.
if people may not even know what they have. It's like, oh, it's granddad's a box or my
Yeah,
granddad's
exactly.
old
They
box.
don't know what it is, and it's just special stuff. So after 1941,
Well, real quick on the badges on the pins, they folded a piece of paper and stuck it in there, right?
Yeah, they had a piece of paper, which
You had a copy
you
of
had
one
to have tweezers basically to get the thing out of there. So they gave you a paper license with it. Here's an example of one. You can tell how it's all torn up from probably going in and out of the back of the license. But you had to fold that thing up into a little, and it fit right in the back of this.
I mean, we're looking at about a $50 size button.
Yeah.
And that had to be folded up even smaller than that to slide in the back.
Yeah. So it's just sort of odd that they did it that way. I don't know why they didn't have like a card or something, but then they went to the following year. They had a little metal, carrying thing.
Almost looks like a small belt buckle.
Yeah. And so you stuck
Got
your
it.
license back there, and this only lasted for about a year, I think. I've never seen one of these licenses that didn't, let me see, every one I've seen expires in 1942. So I've never seen a 1943 or anything like that, but I have paper card licenses that from 1943, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48.
Of course you do.
So that tells me that they probably went back to the card. And then the last year before the Game and Fish, they had a plastic holder.
Which is very similar.
Which is
to
very
this,
similar.
but
And
plastic.
I don't know why they did that either.
Okay.
Because these licenses are really hard to get in and out. I actually took this one out, and I'm afraid to try to stick it back in. I can't, but they're teeny little licenses. And so after that, pretty much everything became, after the Game and Fish, we went to the card. And that went on until TWRA, and then they started to have a little bit different license.
Yeah. What they had like kill tags and things attached to them later on.
Exactly. 1959, they had stamps you had to buy, big game stamps. Where's my big game stamps here?
And trout
Right here.
stamps. Yeah, okay.
Four big game stamps right here that they had. It ended in 1959 of May 31st or June 30th, and then they started to have these kill tag books. So you'd had a bear, boar, a deer tag, and you just basically tagged the animal, and that lasted for, early 70s.
I think so, yeah.
And then they started to go off the tear-off tags on the licenses, and you had to buy, supplemental licenses, archery, muzzleloader, so be it.
Yeah.
And that went all the way up till 2000, and we went to the fun paper.
The real system.
The receipts.
Yeah, the real system receipts, and that went till, 17? And then we're doing everything online now, basically.
Something like that, yeah.
Print your license off or get a card.
Yeah.
So it's
Which is
sad
great.
in a way, but because there's not really collectible anymore. It's a piece.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be
Printer
neat to have a,
paper,
you have a card you can get, which is a collectible, but it would be neat to have something I don't know. I love the history part of it. But
Well, that's the collectible card you can get now for $5. That's a cool
exactly.
thing
And that's a good thing.
to collect.
And I see a lot of those out in the field. There's a lot of people that have them.
That's awesome. That's a great collection.
That's your license history, I guess, in a nutshell. So,
Well, talk a little bit about the gear that an officer is using, because you've got some cool retro badges this year. You've even went to a cowboy hat in your gear this year. But like early on, you've got an old holster with you there that was leather and had a 6-shooter. I guess you carried a 6-shooter.
They carried a Smith & Wesson military and police 38s is what they started out with.
Yeah.
This was neat. This says Tennessee Game and Fish Commission, so this was made for the Tennessee Game and Fish Commission.
Authentic.
Yeah, this is authentic. And then, of course, it, wrapped around your leg and just went over your shoulder like that. And, not real secure, but a little different from what we do now.
Yeah.
You had your 38 bullets there. So
that was the design.
Yeah, that was the design. Really, they only, back before 49, and most officers were just, didn't wear uniforms. They just had a little badge.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the Tennessee Game and Fish Commission started to go to uniforms. I came on in March of '93, and they had just transitioned, to the Glock. We had a 40 caliber Glock 22.
So it's been around a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got almost 31 and a half years in. So we've had a 40 caliber, two 40 calibers, a 357 SIG, and now a 9mm. We've stayed with Glock the whole time. But prior to that, the officers, I think a year prior to that, were still carrying the wheel guns. So.
Mm-hmm. So, very recent commission meeting, Colonel Darren Ryder, he's retiring, but he spoke at the meeting and talked about how times have changed, and he talked about how much an officer made at the, back in the day. It's like, what? Started out?
He started about 14,000 or something like that.
Yeah, you got that in the article?
Yeah. So, when 49, when the Game and Fish Commission was created, the minimum starting salary for an officer was $180 per month. And topped out at $215 per month. Supervisors made $245 and topped out at $290. They had to provide their own vehicles back then. And fast forward, I mean, even Wayne Rich and those guys, right before us, they made peanuts. I mean, money when they started out. They qualified for food stamps for government assistance, being state employees. That's how bad it was.
Wow. Guys with master's degrees, it just. It was
couldn't even pay the bills.
Yeah,
the lights on in the house. So they lobbied, God bless them, to get the salaries brought up to a competitive level.
It's so much better now. I mean, you don't get into wildlife and fishery science and want to be a wildlife officer. At least back in my day. Now the pay is pretty good, but I didn't do it for the money. I just wanted to do it, and they could have put me on an island in Mississippi, just give me a job and not paid me for a year. I wanted to get on really bad with TWRA when I just got out of college.
Well, we got about a couple minutes here, but how did you get started? Where did you start? Mississippi?
Hawkins County. I started in Hawkins County in '93 and then
you.
Transferred to Loudon, and then became an assistant supervisor. And then we were changed, sort of reorganized, and I've been a lieutenant in District 41 ever since.
That's cool. And what's one of the most memorable things in your career? If you could share it with the folks listening, putting you on the spot right now. But
the earlier days,
of course.
Some fun
earlier
times.
days, the '90s. Those were the fun times.
Yeah,
it's just changed a lot. So I'm still having a good time. I still love my job. But.
Yeah. Well, we don't, like you said, you don't do it for the money. You did it because your love for wildlife and the outdoors, and
you
still love to hunt and fish, even though you've worked in it for so many years.
I still do that. Passion. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. To go to North Dakota every year duck hunting and love to deer hunt. So
it's in his blood.
Yeah. Trapping.
Also,
I'm a big trapper now too.
Cool.
So I always loved trapping.
Didn't you trap?
Yeah.
I can blame you for getting me into Ironman triathlon.
Oh yeah, that took a lot of time. I missed a lot of weekends. I got in a little trouble for that because I was doing Ironmans, but. No, don't blame me.
When I first started, I didn't know what an Ironman was. He was telling somebody about it. You swim 2.4 miles, you ride a bike 112, then you run a marathon. I go, why would anybody want to do that, dude? That sounds like torture.
Not me.
Fast forward 10 years after that, I found myself doing them, and he really mentored me. So thank you, man. Those were
they were good times.
I couldn't do it now to save my life.
My knees are shot now. I can't even. It's hard. So I wish I could still run, but I can't.
Yeah.
Catches up to us.
I'll let y'all do those. I'll just keep hosting the show here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it so much. It's been fun reflecting on this article and then seeing some of the cool things from back in the day. It's always fun to look back like this. So thank you.
Absolutely.
This is Tennessee WildCast. Keep coming back, and we'll see you next time.
Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Join us as we celebrate 75 years of conservation in our great state. You can invest in Tennessee's wildlife future by purchasing a license at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com. That's GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.